So essentially, I'm going to take you, I tend to do fill in the blank notes and like used to do chalk and talk or write on the whiteboard. And most of my notes were in Word. And then when I started teaching with the iPad, I moved them to Notability. And so I'm going to take you from sort of how easy it is and how little work you have to do to get it into Notability. And then take you over to sort of show you what you can do with it or what I do with it. So I just basically, you can go from your files. I save everything to Dropbox because I'm not a fan of Google Drive. But then I just save this top one here for you. So wherever you save your file, you can see I just opened it up in Word. You can write in Word and annotate in Word. I don't like the way it does it. It didn't like the way it does it. I don't know if this bug has been fixed. It used to like highlight and do funky things, so I never was a fan of it. But what you can do is you can send a copy. So you click that little arrow up at the top, and then I send a copy, and then I select the format. I make it a PDF. I select send with another app, and I just choose Notability. And what that does is it's going to create a note in Notability. And so I'm going to create a new note, and you can title it whatever you want. So this was clearly from my fall 19. And then you can place it in whatever subject you want. So in my Notability, I have a bunch of subjects selected, or a bunch of subjects that I've created. And right now I'm just going to save it to unfiled because I'm going to delete it in a second. But you can file it in your course in the appropriate folder as you see fit. And then you just select import. And quick as that, it's now a PDF in Notability. So you don't have to do anything fancy to this. And so then you just open up Notability, and this is, I think, a blank note. So I'm going to go back here. Yep. And then I saved it to unfiled. So there is my note that I literally just imported for you. So it took like 2 seconds to do. So I used to think it was kind of a multi-step process that I'd have to do ahead of time, but you don't. Like, you could do this right at the start of class, no problem. And so what I do when I'm teaching is I project this on the screen. I used to, again, like project on the whiteboard and fill in the blanks on the whiteboard, and the students weren't able to see because of glare and all these issues. But so basically I just have my notes, and then I just kind of start scrolling through and I talk about it. And I'll say, okay, we have a budget constraint, and let's say we have this income I, and we buy 2 goods, and let's call them X and Y. Okay. And so the price of X is just going to be PX. The price of Y will be PY. So the students see this, and it's just like I'm then filling out the notes with them. And so if you have all your money, you can spend PX times X plus PY times how many Ys you buy, and that's going to expend all your money. So that's what we call a budget constraint, for example. And so then I have all of sort of that, right? So what that does is, like, that's, again, I'm just filling in the notes that they can see. And then I scroll down, right? So I can scroll with it as I want to. And so we'll say, look, so let's say Billy buys milkshakes and cheesy fries. If he spends all his money on milkshakes, right? X, let's call it, that's milkshakes. Then he can buy what? He can buy, if he spends all of his money on milkshakes, he can buy 40 milkshakes. If he spends all of his money on cheesy fries, he can buy 20 cheesy fries, right? So I would say something like this, right? And so then we need to graph it. So this is what I really like it for as an economist, is I have to draw things. I have to draw lots of graphs a lot of times, and it's important for them to be able to draw the graphs. So here's the thing. When I draw a graph, usually it looks something like that, and that's like not super pretty, right? And it's kind of ugly. So let's get rid of that. What we accidentally discovered last fall is if you just hold your pencil down, it snaps a straight line, which was like the coolest thing ever. And even the students were like, whoa. So now I can really easily draw this graph. And so we're gonna put cheesy fries on the vertical axis. We'll put milkshakes on the horizontal axis. And then here's the thing, econ, we draw lots of graphs, we move lots of lines. And so I used to have to carry like a stack of markers, and now I don't have to do that anymore, right? So I can draw my first budget constraint. And look, my line isn't straight, but if I hold my pencil, oh, now it's this beautiful straight line. So we've got this budget constraint 1. And then when I have curve shift, I change the color so we can like see the shift, right? And then I've got this beautiful curve 2. And you can actually see it's like relatively parallel. That was amazing. And then if I change the price of a curve or price of a good, right, I can draw another one, which actually, let's do, I should just erase this, right? So first of all, the eraser is love, oops, don't do that. Then you just hit undo. But let's say I want to draw another line, but I want it to be a dotted line. So I could do it dotted, which you could see was ugly. Or if you select the line, you can change the style. Wait a minute, I hope. And I can make it a dotted line, right? So now I have this like really nice dotted line instead of the crooked dotted lines that I draw. So that's kind of cool. The other thing is you can do other shapes. Like if you ever need to draw a circle, you just hold your pencil and it makes a perfect circle. If you need to draw a triangle, you can like hand draw a triangle and it'll make a lovely triangle. You can, again, you can fill them in. You can change the line color. You can fill them in with different colors. No color, right? No fill. You can just play around with that to get what you want it to, how you want it to look, right? And then if I erase it, I can just touch one part of it with the eraser and the whole thing will disappear. So that's sort of the main stuff. So let's say I'm doing something and I'm filling in my notes here. And so I say like, okay, let's say, here's another example. Billy gets more money. He's got $100. Now what can he buy? And I say, okay, well, so he can buy 50 milkshakes. And then a student says, wait, I don't understand. How did you get that? And I'm like, oh, okay. So sometimes what I'll do is I will like go to pencil if it's like or what I consider pencil color, right? Like this gray. And then I can zoom in and I can say, well, if you have $100 a month and it's $2 a milkshake, you could buy 50 milkshakes. So there's the math for that, right? So you can zoom in if you need to and then zoom out. And so they can see the math you're doing, but it's not because of like how you write, it's scaled appropriately when you zoom back out, right? Another thing that I could do is, let's say I have this graph and I want to go label it. Sorry, I'm flipping back and forth. So that's another nice thing is I can scroll up and down and back and forth, whereas before you'd like erase the graph and it was gone and you have to say, oh, refer back to the graph we just drew. Well, now I can access the graph I just drew. But now I'm trying to like label it. And let's say I'm trying to label something down here, right? And I want to say like, oh, well, here's my income too. Oh, it's blurry, I can't see it. I drew this graph too big. You can cut the whole thing out and shrink it. Right? And then I can move it. And so I can say, oh, there, now I can label it better. So you can draw the whole thing big and shrink it. You can move them. You could, in fact, duplicate it if I wanted to, right? So I can duplicate, and there's another one of the exact same graph. So that can be handy too. And so some of the things that I've really liked are changing the colors, the moving and cutting things, especially like when a student goes back and asks you something and you then have to like fill in with the actual math or whatever to show you how you got to that endpoint. So I think that's sort of the main thing that I do is, again, this is all just fill in the blank stuff that I would do in all my classes pretty much. And even now I do this in like a class I'm teaching now. I have a PowerPoint that I do the same thing for, except it's like I've created the PowerPoint and then I put it in Notability and I do the fill in that way. And they all have the PowerPoint slides that they can fill in if they want to. So the other thing that I do with Notability that I have found to be super useful is I do all my grading in it. So when the students pass in homeworks or whatever, or papers, they upload them to Blackboard and then I download them. And if they, I ask them to do it as a PDF because it's a little bit easier for me. But then that way I'm able to actually like grade it. So like if this was a student's work, I might be like, oh, great. Oops, not like that. Sorry. I might say like, great job. Great. Right. And then I can handwrite notes in their work the way I would have in person, or said like, oh no, this is like way wrong, except I wouldn't say it that mean, right? I'd be like, oh no, sorry. like, good try, but you want to do something else. And so then I can give them the feedback that they need. And then I create a PDF, and then I upload the PDF with my comments to that little blue, where you put in the grading in the grade book. There's like that blurb where you summarize it. And then I just upload the PDF so they can see all of my handwritten comments. So Blackboard got better with grading on the iPad this year, but I still don't like it because it's like if you write with your pencil, it's really thick. So this just gives you a little bit more control over what you're writing. And if a student has like a single space paper, I can be like, hey, I can get in there if I zoom in and then zoom back out. It allows me to be able to comment in specific areas a little bit nicer.